God is good, and each day that passes brings us a day closer to the launch of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. This is the Nathan NAPALM channel, and if you're not subscribed, please consider doing so, especially if you're interested in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen or old school MMOs, because that's what we talk about. Moving on, I did today want to talk about the new information we have from the November newsletter about the perception system, because it's very fantastic. We got a lot of new news, and I want to discuss it in depth. So let's go. First up, the perception article was written by Joppa, or Chris Perkins. First of all, real quick, I just want to say that Joppa explains how he got to the point where he came up with the idea of the perception system, or how it kind of evolved, right? Like, basically, he was just playing an MMO, he was running around, and he came across this really cool room with the ceiling, this dome looked like the constellations in the sky, and he was checking it out. He thought it was really awesome, and so he started looking around. He wanted to know more about it, so he's looking for an NPC or somebody to tell him more information and evolve and find out about this fantastic thing that he found. But guess what? It wasn't there, it wasn't available, it was just something really cool graphically that the art team put in the game. And so this kind of pushed him into thinking in such a way of, you know what, in these MMOs all we're doing is we're looking at the mini-map. That's all we're doing. We're just looking at the mini-map, getting from quest A to quest B in the most timely fashion so we get the best progression we can with our time, and we're not looking at the world. So his whole thing, or I guess you could say Visionary Realms' whole thing about the progression system, is to get your eyes off of the mini-map and start looking at the world, okay, which is really cool. I think we can all get on board that that's a beautiful idea. Now, how in the world are they going to pull this off? I know I've made a perception system before in the past, but we didn't have this much information. Definitely didn't know some of the things that are in this newsletter, so I really want to grab hold of it and just squeeze it and see what comes out. Alright, so what is the perception system? All it is, basically, guys, it's a questing tool. It's something that gives the players the tools to find something cool when they start looking for it, and not when you're just told to, right? So not just you find something because you're told to find something, but because you found it, right? So to make it more immersive and all that kind of thing, and the game to be awesome, all right? So, and to make quests something cool, something worth investigating and looking into, or not if you don't want to do that kind of thing. So the perception system, first of all, is optional. You can turn it off. You can make it to where these things do not pop up, they don't bother you, and you can just play the game. However, most of us, I feel like, are going to get into the lore. We're going to want to know more about the world. Maybe not at first. Maybe some of us just want to play the game. We want to level up. We want to get our gear, blah, blah, blah. And maybe later, we're like, now I'm getting, now I'm high level. I want to do it. Well, it doesn't matter. You can turn it off. You can turn it on. But the perception system is their way of doing really cool quests. So let's get into it about what the perception system is. Now, first of all, there are mechanics to it, okay? You have skills. You have two different skills that you can use in the perception system. The skills are Insight and Investigate, okay? Now, they're very different. Insight is passive. You don't have to do anything, okay? It's just a passive skill. And basically, it is the chance that you will notice something in the environment. Now, there's lots of things that can flag it. We'll get to that in a minute. But it can also get better. So your insight can level up, let's just say. Okay, so it can get better, and you can start to notice things in the environment that you didn't before, which makes going back to old areas something really cool that you could do, and maybe notice some new things because your insight is better. The other skill is called Investigate. Now, Investigate is an active skill, something you have to use. You have to pick that you want to investigate something. Now, this gives you a much higher chance to notice more details, okay, so than the insight, because you're actually going up to something that you actually noticed, and you're using the investigate tool, or skill I should say, and to dig into and get more information and get more clues. So the example I love to give is that you walk into an NPC's home. You see some paintings on the wall. There's something suspicious about them. Maybe they're laid out in a specific order. Maybe it's what's on the paintings themselves, but it's something going on with that. So you're like, I'm going to investigate these. And maybe you look at them and you investigate, use that skill, And maybe then you learn something new. Maybe the paint is still fresh, like they were just painted, which would be kind of weird. There's a bunch of still wet paintings hanging in somebody's wall, right? Maybe it turns out that the paintings have a signature at the bottom, and it's somebody's name. You can read it, and that maybe then you can go ask that person. But it just gives you more information about what you're at, what you're investigating, so you can continue further, and it's just like another clue, okay? And it gives you that ability to do that out in the world and different things you notice, okay? Very cool. And keep those two in mind, because that's how everything's gonna work. A ping, just from inside, right, which is passive, or you notice something and you investigated it, okay? Now, let's talk about those pings. So it's just a window in the UI that pops up, and if certain conditions are met, and we'll get to that in a minute, but basically it sends a little message to you that gives you a clue, right? And they're calling those perception pings. So there's 3 different types of these pings though, okay? Just like everything in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, it's not as simple as it looks from a first glance. So let's look at these 3 different types of pings, alright? Very important. Alright, so you have the lore ping. Now the lore ping basically is like a point of interest, like a particular spot that is interesting, or it could be an object, a big tower in the distance maybe, or something more subtle, maybe a rock that looks like a face, or it could be an individual, it could be a person, you notice a person, it could be also a variety of details in the environment, okay? The example they give is, look, it's an interesting statue. Players could investigate this and get, a possibility at more information and move forward. And then there's other ones like the example they give of bones are scattered everywhere, right? So obviously you could see that just by walking into this area. You can obviously see that there's bones scattered everywhere, but it's just letting you know, hey, look, there's bones scattered everywhere. This is a ping. There's more to this than it just looks cool, right? And then you can go along and you can investigate, right, and find out more details and more clues, such as the example they give, the skulls appear human and are brutally damaged, right? So then you can move forward with the lore and what's going on, or with the storyline, I should say. Alright, and then you have the lore pings, which often lead into actual storylines, either immediately or down the road. What is a storyline? Well, that's a different kind of ping, okay? That would be our second kind. Lore being number 1, storyline being number 2. So, the perception-based quests are called storylines. So, these basically present the player with options, okay? When this is a big deal, right? This isn't just a minute detail that's going to tell you more about the lore. This is something that has a wider story arc, and it's an actual quest, okay? So, lots of steps to it, etc. So, basically what you can look at with the storyline is that you have 3 options when one pops. You can accept it, which means you want to do it, and you're interested in it, and it will continue hinting at you and giving you this information that your perception skill has to be high enough level, etc. But you can continue on. Alright, the other option is to just disregard it. This means, hey, look, I don't care, I'm not interested, I'm moving on. And according to the official source, they cease and the storyline becomes unavailable. Okay? Now the other option would be consider, which that just basically means, you know what, that's cool, I don't have time right now, or I don't want to do it right now, I'm doing something else, and I'll come back. Maybe later I'll decide to accept it or disregard it. I just don't have time right now. Like you're in with your group and you're run through this area and you only got a couple hours, your friends got to go, so you're trying to get this particular thing done, and what do you know, a new storyline perception pops, and oh my gosh, I can't do this right now, right? I don't have time, my group doesn't want to do it, and I don't want to miss it though, so I'm gonna consider, right? And to be honest with you, the way everything lines up, it seems like if you didn't click anything, you just kept going. I don't know if it's really just going to stay on your screen until you pick an option. It could, but I believe that probably the default, if you don't do anything, would just be, you would assume that you considered. Now that puts it on a cooldown, so you can't just run out of it apparently and run right back in. There's a little bit of a cooldown before you can, take it on again, before it shows again. We don't know the details on that. It probably depends on the particular one and how long they decide to make that cooldown. Alright. Now the third kind is a character ping. This is where it gets really interesting, because As your skills in perception grow, class-specific insights can begin to present themselves. So first of all, you have to have the correct skill level of the perception, and also it's class-specific. It's not only class-specific, it can also be a combo of class and race-specific, okay? So it's getting complicated here. They typically are triggered on the class alone, but, like I just said, they can vary based on your particular race. So the example they give is a rogue might have a ping of something saying trusting him won't be easy. The wizard might ping powerful magic is at work here. And the ranger might notice that there's a scratching sound that a small animal must be nearby. So you see how that's tied to the class, right? So the rogue, being a rogue, doesn't trust so easy, right? He notices there's something not right about this. That was his perception. The wizard's perception noticed the magic, right? Because he's a wizard. And the ranger noticed an animal because he's a ranger, right? So if you all three of those are in a group together, they can start to put their own individual clues together, and they can maybe figure out what's going on quicker, right? Or see it in a different light even. So I think that's cool that the same event could be three different things, right? Or maybe it only pops for that rogue, right? So if you get a rogue in your party, it's gonna pop for him. You don't see anything as a wizard, right? You don't see anything, but the rogue can take you and your group on this little mini storyline adventure, and you get to go because, why? Because you had a rogue in your party. Lucky you, right? Now let's move on. The really cool part about the perception system, right, is that we all know the problem. Everybody's going to say, said in my last video I talked about perception, they're going to say it again, and that's what you've already thought about. Is, man, this is pretty cool. But the problem is that people are going to data mine the game. They're going to release these websites. It's going to tell you exactly where to go, what to do, and blah, 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 and it's going to ruin it, and it's not going to be as cool as it sounds. It sounds great on paper. It's not going to be as cool in practice, right? That's what we're thinking. It's what the negativity, the negative side of our brain is trying to lead us to think, okay? Well, let me say something that might make you feel a little bit better about that, because that's what I hear a lot on my channel when I talk about the perception system, is people saying things like that. Here's the deal. If it's based on your particular skill, right? Your particular skill level of the perception, and it's also based on the race you picked, and it's also based on the class you picked for that race, okay? So there's already three variables. Now, in the newsletter, it actually mentions there's more variables than just those three to ping all the perceptions. It could also be changed by the weather, by the climate, by the day or night cycle, and probably others, okay? So let's talk about this for a second. Imagine making a website. Imagine you had this information and you're going to release it on your website, telling people where to go get all the perceptions, and where to go and when to go, etc. That's going to be a little difficult because of all these variables. So you would have to say, well, you have to be a human. You also have to be a rogue. You also need to be there only at night. It has to be raining. It has to be humid. It has to be at evening time. And your perception system also has to be at least to this skill level. That's a little complicated, especially if that skill level for the perception isn't obvious. If it's not right there in the UI and it's kind of like running in the background, right? And then it makes it even more difficult, because then they're going to have to say, well, here's some easy perception ones to do, right? I could see them doing that. Like, these only require that you be a wizard, okay? So you can do these, and they're low perception pings, so you don't have to be very skilled. Now here's the next tier. After you've done 5 of those, then you can move on and do these. But once again, some of these, it has to be a certain weather, a certain climate, a certain time of day, and you have to be a certain race and a certain class. So it's getting a little complicated, guys. That's starting to get a little hard to just make a spreadsheet or just make a page and tell you, go do these in this order. Do you see where I'm going with this? Do you see how difficult that I think that would be? Now, if there's always workarounds, right? Like, they could make the website to where you enter in your race, your class, and it generates, you know, but it would still be variable. You'd still have to go to an area and hang out there and wait for it to rain or whatever. Do you see what I'm saying? And for it to rain at the particular time of day. And they're not all going to trigger off that kind of complicated, but a lot of them will. So you see, that muddles things. Basically, what I see when I read all this is that Visionary Realms has figured out a very crafty way to make their quest storyline-based perception system in such a way that it will be very difficult, right? It's going to become like a headache, almost a chore, to try to cheat your way through the perception system. On the other hand, if somebody knows this knowledge through a friend, through their own personal things that have happened to them in the game, or what have you, and you're in a group with them and they say, hey, dude, you're a human paladin, and it's nighttime, and it's raining. If we hang out in the front of this cave, you're gonna trigger an event, and we can do it, and it's really cool. I know about it, my friend told me, or I've done it on another character, or I've always wanted to see it, and I know this is how it pings. And then you and your other adventurers go off and you do this really cool storyline together, and everybody has a good time, and it's awesome, and everybody feels like, man, it's so cool, we have that human paladin in our party, and it just, everything happened to line up for us to get to do this really cool thing. And you know what? Everybody hasn't seen this. This isn't something that every single Tom, Dick, and Harry that plays this game at level 7 has done this funneled quest, okay? This is special. This was something that me and my group did, and sure, other people can do it too. And people might be lining up to do this one if it's really cool. It doesn't matter. This is still something, it almost feels like you dug into the game and you found a secret. Do you guys remember how cool that was when you got that feeling like an EverQuest, or it doesn't even have to be an MMO? I remember how cool it was when I was really young and Mortal Kombat was the thing, right? And that's crazy to bring up because it has absolutely nothing to do with Pantheon Rise of Fallen, but it doesn't matter except for this one tiny detail, and that was when you were at the arcade with your friends. I was very young at that time, and they said, check this out, I know how to fight Reptile. And, you know, I think it was the uppercut down into the pit, and there's this new freaking color of guy that was like Sub-Zero and Scorpion, except for he was green, right? And big whoop-de-doo. But you felt like you knew something crazy, and your friend was a legend then. Like, oh my gosh, dude, I can't believe that you figured out how to do this. That's cool, guys. Moments like that can be recreated by developers. They just have to be crafty, man. And if I gotta say anything about the team behind Pantheon Rise of Fallen, these are some crafty dudes. I have some theories about a lot of things that I think's going on in Visionary Realms that I won't talk about in this video because I want to try to stay on topic to the best of my ability. But they are some crafty dudes, I will say that, and this is another example of them just really thinking of something that is not really that complicated, right? The idea behind it sounds totally natural, like this is the way questing should have became. You know, this is like the natural evolution of a quest, because this in real life, as ridiculous as it is to compare it to, in real life, this is how things are, right? Like, you are with your friends and you may not notice something that they notice. A detail, you know, we really have perception. You know, people notice different things and for different reasons. And that's one of many reasons that people in society find the value of getting different people together to work on projects and things, is because of real life perception. So it's not complicated that they came up with this, but it's just crafty. It's really cool, and it solves some issues that I think are deep rooted in the MMORPG genre. Not just the MMORPG genre, but the RPG genre as a whole. Even single player games, I think, should take notice of this and how cool it is, and how this all is tying together, and start putting this into some single player games, and that would be amazing as well. It just kind of magnifies it when it's on a massive scale like an MMO. Alright guys, but anyway, moving on. Like I said earlier in the video, you can turn it off. I would assume, though, if you've listened to me rant this long about the perception system in my video, you're either very bored or very interested in the perception system. I'm going to assume the latter. So anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. I went on long enough. I don't like my videos to be so long. But the perception system, I'm excited about it. What do you guys think? Are you guys excited about it as I am? Do you want to see it? Do you want to dig in? Do you want to go crazy on it? Are you going to be driving your group crazy because every time you guys go out, you're going to be trying to investigate every little thing, and you're going to be wanting every time something pings, you're going to want to go off on this separate little adventure and drive your group crazy, and they're not going to want to invite you because they're going to be like, oh my gosh, we're not bringing this lady every time she comes. There's freaking, we got to do every little minute detail, and is that how you're going to be? I'm going to try not to be that ridiculous. I'm kind of the one-track guy, so I think I can do the perception system. And that's another thing, real quick before I go, I want to talk about, is that the perception system will be something really fun to do when you just want to chill, when you just want to do you in the game. You just want to hang out, kind of solo, just do something, get some kind of progress, something done, right? Like, you know, fishing or crafting or whatever. And the perception system will be really good for just, you know what, I don't feel like grouping, I don't feel like all the dynamics and all this kind of thing. Tonight, I just want to chill out. I'm going to freaking check out that place I saw. I'm going to see if I can't dig into this town that I like, in this dungeon, this area, whatever it is. And I'm going to try to find out some more details, and I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to learn some new lore. I might start some new storylines, etc. Now, here's the kicker, too. Are they going to tie the epic quest for the, you know, for the classes? Are they going to tie that in to the perception system? Interesting. I don't know. We'll see. Probably not. I think they'll be two separate things, but it's interesting to think on. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something new. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so, especially if you're interested in Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen, or old school MMOs, because that's what we do here at the Nathan NAPALM. Guys, I'll see you next time. God bless, and happy gaming.